That looks quite good. Check that. Square, check that. So I use the square on the actual square edge of the door, and we just check that there, and you can see there's the bevel on that. And we check it for consistency up top. And there we go. About an 18-inch bevel, 3 mil is what we want. So it's going from square to about 3 mil. And the same there. So that's perfect. That's exactly what we want, folks. Okay? So that's it in a nutshell, guys. That's what you need to do in order to bevel the door. The process now is the exact same on the other edge of the door. Okay, guys, so that's the bevel cut on the lock side. What we need to do now is actually position the door on the door hook in such a way that we can actually plane the bevel, on the actual hinge side of the door. Now the best way to do this is to simply go like so. Just rotate the door end for end. Like that, and just bear in mind, folks, that this is a really lightweight hollow core door. If this was a heavier door, you actually should get someone to actually lift it with you. Okay, down the back. Now, guys, we now know that the door is set up in the correct way, that we can plane the bevel along this edge of the door. And just to show that we're right there, earlier on we put the hanging position there, so we know that's facing our belly, like I said at the start of the segment. And once that's facing the belly, we know that we've got the bevel running in the right direction. Okay? So the process for this side would be the exact same as what we just done for the lock side. Hold that for a second. Okay, folks, now that we've just finished cutting the bevel on the lock style of the door, what we now need to do is transfer the hinge locations from the frame onto the new door. There's a very simple process for doing this, folks, and it goes like this. You simply put a measuring tape up to the underside of the actual head of the frame, and you record the measurement down to the start of the hinge mortise. Okay, so that's from that point there, right down to the start of that hinge mortise there. And I can now read that that is 153 mil. What I need to do is I need to make a measurement of 150 mil from the top of the door. The reason I want to deduct 3 mil is I want to leave a 3 mil clearance between the top of the door and the top of the frame, the head of the frame. So I'll just check that again. I've got 153, so I know I need to mark 150. Then I keep the tape, put it up right at the top of the frame, and I take a measurement down to the top of the second hinge, and I can see that it's 1677. And if I take 3 mil off that, that's 1674. So now I go over to the actual door. Okay, guys, now that we've taken the measurements on the hinge locations from the frame, what we're going to do is we're actually going to transfer them to the door. The first thing we must do is we must make sure that we're actually hooking the tape on the top of the door. And the best way that we can actually ascertain if we're doing that or not is just check for our reference H, which actually denotes the top of the door, because we put that on earlier in the segment. So when we take the measurement off the door frame, we've noted that it's 150 mil from the underside of the frame down to the start of the actual hinge mortise. We know we've got to deduct 3 mil from that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark 150 mil down. So that's simply done like so. So 150 mil. And I put an X on the side of the actual line which I want to mortise the door on. Again, I hook on from the top of the door, and I just check the measurement from that where I wrote it down in the frame earlier on, and it's 1677. So if I deduct 3 mil, that's 1674. So I literally mark 1674, and I mark it on the door. And again, I put an X on the side of the line which I want to actually hinge mortise the hinge for. Okay, the next thing I have to do is actually transfer the outline of the hinge onto the door, and the simplest way to do that is like so. Get the barrel of the hinge and use that as a stop against the edge of the door. That prevents it from going in too far. And now I simply just transfer the outline of the actual hinge onto the door with a pencil, and I do the same down the far end of the door. All the while making sure that I'm actually transferring the hinge location onto the correct side of the line which I previously marked. Now, in order to set the depth of the hinge on the door, I simply hold the hinge leaf flush with the top of the door, and I just make a registration mark underneath. Now again, I could set the actual adjustable square, to that depth in similar fashion to that which we done earlier on, and transfer that line along the door. Or alternatively, I can just use my fingers as a stop guide, and I can just transfer that line along the length of the hinge location. And I would do the same down the far end of the door. Now, the next step in the process is to take the chisel and your hammer, and we'll mortise out the hinge gate. Okay guys, now that we've set the depth, all we have to do now is just remove the waste portion of the door out of the perimeter that we've marked. And the process for doing this is very simple. Firstly, we've got to incise this line here and that line there, and then we'll do the actual line running along the back here, and that prevents it actually splitting along the grain of the door. So the process goes like so. And always remember guys, you need to keep the bevel portion of the chisel facing in towards the waste. So it's very simply done like this. Try and be as accurate as we can. Now we can move along and do the back portion. And don't be over exuberant here guys, we don't want to split the door out. And now we just need to remove down to that waistline which we earlier established with our pencil and using our fingers as a guide. Again, the bevel portion is going to face upwards, so it has a tendency to push the waste out of our way. So the process goes like so. I just strike the chisel, I remove a bit, and then with a flick of the wrist I remove the waste. I'm not too concerned at the moment about getting down bang on the right depth. I can fine tune that in the coming moments. Just small little pieces at a time. Flick of the wrist, removing the waste. Now I'll just change direction there and I'll take out that remaining bit there. Just like so. Now I can go along with a pairing action. I can actually take out the remainder of the waste. And again, be careful here, you don't want to put too much pressure on, or you might actually go beyond the actual lines which you've incised into the door. Just take your time with this process guys. You want to actually get the hinge sitting as flush as you can. And again, sometimes you might meet a wee bit of resistance because of the MDF edge on the door here. You can revert back to using the chisel in that instance. And if you notice this time guys, just to actually facilitate taking minimal bits off at a time, I reverse the bevel to face down into the mortise. Try that a wee bit deeper. Just to find that back line as well a bit deeper. Now there's no harm in intermittently just checking the fit of the hinge to make sure we aren't overdoing it. Okay. And sometimes with a gentle tap of the hammer, you can see it sits home perfectly for us. You can see it's still a little bit high here, so I'll move a little bit more meat from there, and I'll just come to the opposite side of the door to make that a little bit easier. As you can see, I'm just taking minimal bits each time, and again I'll check that. Just go there, gentle tap of the hammer, and we're seated perfectly flush there. That is perfect, that's exactly what we want. Okay, so now we can actually proceed to actually... Okay folks, now all we have to do is secure the actual hinge into its mortise. And as you can see, we've achieved our goal of actually recessing the hinge into the edge of the door perfectly flush with the top surface along here. Now all we have to do is use our 4x30mm screws to actually screw the hinge home. It's very important that we make sure we seat the hinges in perfectly flat. We don't want them protruding out in any way because that could cause hinge bind, which would basically ruin the fit of the door. So very simple process. And I'll do the same hinge down the far end. I already have one screwed in. Just set the other two now. Don't over tighten these guys, you don't need to. Just want to tighten them up that the hinge sits flush in the mortise. As you can see, they're sitting perfectly good. Now what I'll do is I'll just move on over clear the door frame so we can be ready to just actually fit the door into the frame. Okay guys, now because this is a lightweight door, I should be able to manage actually hanging it by myself, but if not, you can always get a second pair of hands to help you actually achieve this. Now, the best way to actually do this is just actually pivot the door on this outer edge here, and then align the hinge in the mortise, just like so. And then if you keep your foot there at the back of the door, that should stay in position. You can take the screw gun and get ready with a screw. Just pop it into the hinge. Okay, so that's in the mortise. Screw that home. And then similarly, position the hinge in the mortise. Set the screw. What you can do is just pop one in momentarily in each hinge, and you can just actually check and see if that's going to actually suffice, and just see if the door is actually going to close and clear the actual jam the frame for us. So just check that now, and we can see that it does. So now I can just actually bring the remaining screws very simply. Again, try your best to actually put the screws in such a way that they're seated squarely in the hinge. Close the door, what we're aiming for is a consistent margin all the way around the door. So roughly an eighth of an inch 3mm in old money on the actual hinge side, 3mm on the strike side, and 3mm across the top. Okay, so we'll just check and see if we've actually achieved that goal now. Okay folks, so like I was saying, we're aiming for an eighth of an inch or 3mm of a gap clearance all the way around the door. And I think you'll agree we've actually achieved that quite well. All up the strike jam, it's dead straight, and it's an 3mm gap. Across the head, it's perfectly parallel, and again it's 3mm. And on the hinge side, all the way down, we've achieved our 3mm gap as well. Okay folks, so that concludes our how-to DVD on installing a new door in an old frame. I hope it's going to prove very beneficial in aiding you achieve a professional finish at home when doing your own project. Indeed, this is not the only source of information you can actually get from B&Q. You can go on our B&Q YouTube channel, you can actually look through our You Can Do It book, or indeed you can call into myself or Tomas at any stage of your project journey. Like I said, hope it's going to prove beneficial in the future. Thanks a million for joining us.